Well, you are doing a great job, Dr. Ahmed. So, alhamdulillah.
Thank
It's
you.
only this session, but
Okay, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Hi, everyone. Welcome again, and good afternoon, good morning, whatever your time is. We are glad to have Dr. Hashil again. Today, we'll be talking about understanding and using quantitative research designs and methods, something I myself want to know more about and learn more about, and something that I found somehow tricky when I did my PhD, but I feel that it is interesting to explore more when it comes to quantitative design methods and the rationale behind including some quantitative element in research. So today we are eager to listen to Dr. Hashim and learn more about this design or this methodology. And I'm sure students in the MA level or undergraduate will find this session informative and useful. So looking forward to hearing what Dr. Hashim is going to say. Dr. Hashim, please.
thank you so much. Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulina al-kareem, muallimina al-awwal, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. I welcome you all to this session. This is the fourth webinar, and this time we're talking about the research methods. And we will start off with quantitative methods. Just to put things into context, that this is webinar number 4, and we're going to have a quick highlights on the previous seminar, so we make connections with the previous seminar, and also we connect to the one coming on Monday, inshallah. So since we've already talked about the types of research, types of designs, and how to choose your research topic, so the next step is this, to discuss the methodology. So let's look at our agenda for today. We will start off by highlighting some of the points we covered in the previous webinar, webinar number 3, and the topic was how to choose your research topic. We will then proceed to how we choose our research methodology, the logic and reasons of quantitative research, the quantitative research designs, the different designs that you could choose that suits your research topic and research questions. We're gonna see how we can collect quantitative data, what methods can we use to collect the quantitative data, and how we can analyze them afterwards. So it's not just collecting the data, but we need to ask ourselves, what can we do with these data? So it's about data collection and data analysis also. And then number 7, we'll have example quantitative research topics. We'll see kind of topics that usually quantitative research is concerned with. And then we'll talk about some of the limitations of quantitative methods. And then we'll look at a paper, a sample paper, published paper. And then we'll open the floor for questions and discussions. And I hope we have the time to explore one of the published papers as well. So you see how quantitative research is written up, how it's designed, like in formatted in a publishable paper. Okay, so we try to have both some of the theoretical knowledge, and then we'll see how we can put this knowledge into practice in producing a quantitative paper. Before we proceed, just want to let you know that I'm qualitative researcher, so the session on Monday will be my really favorite topic, but it doesn't mean, of course, we ignore the quantitative, but of course, the quantitative research, as we are going to see, is also important and also useful. Depending on the kind of topics, okay, the kind of research questions you're having. But before that, let's get some quick highlights from webinar 3 so we can make the connection to the previous webinar. We looked at 15 methods through which we can get our topics. Okay, and the first one we talked about, I'm not going to go over the 15. I've just selected the most, what I thought is the most obvious one, the most relevant one to you, our students. We talked about axiological positions, and this refers to what we consider valuable and important, and that's where research ideas come from. Well, we as human beings, we have our own preferences, we have our values, we have our cultural elements that we to consider as well, and so on, and that is contextual and cultural bound, because it depends on what you consider valuable, depending on your values, your beliefs, your cultural, and so on. So usually we consider these issues when it comes to choosing research topics. So that's our axiological position or stance. We also choose topics based on our reflection on our everyday life, on our context, the events that's going on around us, and so on. Our professional experience and practice is also another source of ideas for research. So we are professionals we are in education, either in education, in healthcare, in politics, in journalism, in literature, whatever our profession is. Then I'm sure there's lots of topics, lots of debates that's going on in our profession, lots of challenges and problems as well. So you can get ideas for research using or by reflecting on your professional life as well. Our current debates and controversies, a lot. We have a lot of them now. Some to do with religious beliefs, others to do with politics, others with social issues, and so on. People debate on a daily basis, and people agree and disagree. And you can read this on the papers, you can see this on social media. You see these topics are being like shared and discussed and debated on media and so on. And so we got lots of ideas through this as well. Recommendations for further research made by previous research. So when you, for example, to read a research paper, at the end of the research paper, usually researchers have some kind of recommendations. Or if you take a thesis, for example, or a dissertation, they usually at the end you can see a section on ideas or recommendations for further research. So you can take those as your springboard for future ideas, for triggers for future research. Coursework and assignments can also provide you with some ideas. Social media, of course, and online discussions, and also our personal curiosity, intellectual passions, things that we love, things we like, things we have like a great passion for. Then these are also important sources of topics. So once we've got the topic, so what do you think comes next? So now I have decided on my topic. I know what I want to do. Okay. So for example, let me give you an example. If we have, for example, we now, for example, have one of the challenges in education, which is the use of AI in education. All right. Shall we use it? Should we not? If we are going to allow it, so how are we going to use it? We need to find out, for example, if our students are using it, how they are using it. Is it more with the male or female students? How big this trend is nowadays? So I've got the topic. I know my topic now. I have the passion for it. I like it. I want to proceed. So what do you think the next step is? Please feel free to unmute your mic. What do you think the next step after choosing the topic? So what comes next? Anyone, please? You just if you can unmute your mic and interact. This is meant to be interactive as possible, as much as we can. I know the difficulties, but if anyone would like to share his or her ideas among the students. So once we have the topics, I think the next step to think about is what comes next is, of course, the method. So I've already decided on my topic. I want to investigate the use of AI among my students. But so the next thing to think about is how I'm going to do it. So moving from what, which is the topic, then comes the how, which is the methodology, the method. So what I'm going to do, and then the next question is how I'm going to do it. So we're moving from the topic to the method. All right. But how do we choose our research methodology? In the previous workshop, we talked about how do we choose our research topics. All right. Where do ideas for research come from? Now, once we have decided on a topic, then we need to ask this question. How do we choose our research methodology? Okay, how do we decide? All right, we know the general research methods. We talked about this in our first webinar, if you remember. So are we going to go quanti, quali, mixed method, descriptive research, analytical research? What kind of research are we going to choose? So usually research methodology is the backbone, of course, of any research. Okay, it's very important to establish this fact. I myself, when I judge or review articles, the research methodology used by the researcher is more important for me. Okay, I'm talking about my approach in reviewing articles, and I'm reviewing promotion articles, I'm reviewing journal articles, I'm reviewing conference papers and abstracts. I'm really keeping myself busy with all these work almost on a daily basis. I still got one article pending, pending a review as well for a journal. So it's very important that I look at the methodology. Okay, regardless of the topic, the methodology is very important, and because we use it as a parameter to test the quality of the whole research, because it depends. I mean, what depends on the methodology and the choice of methodology is actually the data, and how the data are collected, how the data are analyzed, and how the data are interpreted. You see what I mean? So it depends on the kind of decisions you take when it comes to research, when it comes to data collection, data analysis, and data interpretation. All right, my dear students, this is a very important issue. So it's not just doing research, but in what way you are doing this research, okay? How are you collecting the data is an important thing to look at. How you are interpreting the data and analyzing the data, how you are making sense of the data is very important, because any problems with this will impact, of course, the quality of your results. And then, of course, we have at the end, we have recommendations be made, or decisions will be taken based on your findings. And then will again, everything is interconnected, as you know. So it's very important to be very careful about the methodology. And that's why we are having all these series of workshops now on methodologies once we have chosen our topics. So we'll help you understand and use quantitative research today, and then qualitative, and then later on the mixed methods and so on. So you have all the three designs. You can then choose based on your nature of your investigation, based on your research questions. So it's very important to establish this fact. The first point you see on your screen, that research methodology is the backbone of any research. And the choice of methodology, of course, will be based on a number of things: the nature of the investigation, the research aims, and of course your research questions. It depends on the kind of investigation. Is it quantitative nature? Is it of qualitative nature? Or is it could be both? And then we look at your research aims, and then from the research aims, we formulate our research questions. You see what I mean? So if you give me a topic and the research aims and questions, I can then guide you through the most suitable methodology. All right. So it depends on the nature of investigation. For example, George, you are doing something related to literature. So that's again to do, we will be looking at the nature of your investigation, the kind of aims and questions you are having for your investigation. And then based on that, you will be choosing the methodology that fits your purpose, right? So it's very important that we understand this, all right? Because we don't have like one size fits all. It depends on these parameters. The usually natural sciences inquiries follow the quantitative research, and these, for example, when they do, for example, research in chemistry, in physics, and so on. Those are the natural sciences. Usually they follow the quantitative research. But we also use quantitative research in social sciences. We use qualitative research and also mixed methods. But quantitative is also used in social sciences. Again, as I said, depending on the nature of investigation, as we're gonna see later on. If we are talking, for example, about a social phenomena, for example, the use of social media in learning English. Okay, if the teacher, for example, wants to find out how social media impact or affect his or her students proficiency in English. All right, and so then again, that's educational topic, and so he or she could design a questionnaire, as we're going to see, and that is also considered a quantitative research. So you can use quantitative, but here I'm talking about the overall trends. Usually quantitative research would be used for natural sciences. That's what they do. In social sciences, I myself favor qualitative and mixed methods rather than using one single method, which is a quantitative, especially when it comes to educational, social, emotional topics, and so on. All right. So let's get the three short definitions of quantitative research. Well, what is quantitative research? In Arabic, it's al-bahth al-kammi. And in Arabic, the word kammi means the quantification. So when we look at the kam, we are looking at the the quantifying or the quantification of the data. So we look at the data in terms of numbers. So we obtain the data, and usually it takes the shape of numbers, and then we interpret them again in the same way. So we quantify things. What is quantitative research? It refers to the studies in which data are analyzed using mathematically based methods such as statistics, and is often associated with positivist paradigm. Okay, this is a bit of research philosophy here. So, but that's the first simple definition by Given 2008. Let's look at another one by Mugis in 2010. They say the quantitative research is about collecting numerical data to explain phenomena. Okay, ظواهر phenomena is ظواهر. So it's a research that is about collecting numerical data to explain phenomena. And look at the word near the phrase numerical data. Okay, that's important. So it is especially used when the researcher aims to test hypotheses, assess relationships, or make predictions. And pay attention to this last sentence in the definition, because it's gonna be also the basis when we then talk about the different designs. So it is used when the researcher aims to test hypotheses, assess relationships, or make predictions. Okay, so we use quantitative research to help us test hypotheses, assess relationships between variables, and make predictions about future by looking at the current situation, how the relationship between the different variables, and how the things might develop in the future. So we make predictions, and we make generalizations about the findings as well. So that's the second definition. Let's look at the Aligan Gardenson 2002. They also had their short definitions of quantitative research, and they say that quantitative research is explaining phenomena by collecting numerical data. Again, so the focus here is on numerical data. So we talk about the type of data. Okay, you will notice that next Monday, inshallah, when we talk about qualitative research, we'll not be using numerical data. We'll be talking about different types of data of nature of qualitative nature. All right, like perceptions, feelings, emotions, attitudes, beliefs, and so on. Okay, but so this is different. So here we're talking about collecting numerical data that are analyzed using mathematically based methods, in particular statistics. So these are three quick definitions. I hope the picture is becoming now, is taking shape. Now the quantitative research is taking shape in your mind by looking at these definitions. So all the three definitions talk about basically two things. They emphasize the fact that the data are of numerical nature, and the analysis is being done using mathematically based methods, okay, using statistics, for example. And we're going to look at two types of statistics later. So this is what a quantitative research is. So it's about an investigation that aims at studying phenomena of using quantitative tools and methods. Okay, in the data analysis and data collection and data analysis as well. So that's what quantitative research is about. Let's now look at the areas and domains and topics of quantitative inquiry. Usually, quantitative research is concerned with describing the nature of phenomena, okay, طبيعة الظواهر. So we're looking at the nature of phenomena, we're looking at the size of the phenomena, and also quantitative research can help us also look at or study the direction of phenomena, okay? A relationship between variables, okay? العلاقة ما بين متغيرات الدراسة, variables. And also we're looking at correlations. Are we having positive correlations or negative correlations? Okay. And then we also, the quantitative research usually asks these kind of questions. What? How many? To what extent? Okay. You will notice that later on we'll be talking about different types of questions when it comes to qualitative research, البحث النوعي. But today we're talking about البحث الكمي, quantitative research, and usual quantitative research asks these kind of questions. What? Okay. How many? Okay. And to what extent? In which direction? How big something is? Okay. And so on. A relationship between variables. All right. Let's look at an example. Let's take an example. For example, if we take an educational topic, since we are all in education, for example, one of the problems is a dropout. Okay, usually students leave college for different reasons. Some of them begin the foundation program, the college, or at school as well. And then they find themselves having to leave, having to drop out. So this is called dropout. So they drop out from school or college or university for different reasons. So let's suppose that we have this topic and want to find out the nature of this phenomena. So we design a questionnaire or a survey, and then we'll send it out in order to understand the phenomena. So that's the first one, natural. Then we study the nature of the phenomena. But sometimes we might be interested in also finding out how big this problem is. So we'll find out through the survey or through analyzing the records from Ministry of Higher Education, for example, or we'll look at the universities and colleges. We ask them for data. We'll look at the records, and then we can find out how big the problem is. Is it really a phenomena? Is it really a big problem? All right. But sometimes we also might be interested in not just only finding out the nature of the phenomena or the size of it, but we are also interested in finding out the direction of the phenomena. What do you mean by direction? Now, the phenomena, if you can imagine a ball, okay, like a phenomenon, and then from the center, is the phenomena going upwards, downwards, to the right-hand side, the left-hand side? Okay, so that again, we need to find out. So if we talk about social phenomena, educational or humanities, a phenomena within the humanities, then using the example we have given, the dropout, then we need to find out, for example, is this a problem is like bigger among the male students or the female students? You see what I mean? So that we're looking at the direction now. Is it going, it has like disposition towards more male or female students? And then finding out, of course, through the numbers, how big how the problem is among the boys, or how big the problem is again among the girls. You see what I mean? So we can investigate the nature of the phenomena, the size of the phenomena, or the direction of the phenomena, within our context. All right, and then of course we might be also be interested in looking at the variables, like for example, age is a variable, um, gender is a variable, socio-cultural issues again, economic situation, it can be a variable, maybe because people study only 1 year and then they have to drop out to leave college or university because they want to find a job, especially among men and so on. So this is what quantitative research is about. All right, I hope it's clear. So these are the usual the areas and the domains that is of concern to quantitative inquiry. All right, are there any questions up to here? So far, so good. So just want to give you a taste of what quantitative research is about. So we looked at the definitions, and these are the areas of quantitative design of quantitative research before we move on to the designs. Are there any questions? Please feel free to unmute your mics and ask, please. I don't want to go too fast for you. So far, so good. Okay. I don't have the chat in front of me at the moment, so if there are anything in particular, Dr. Ahmed, I need to respond to, please let me know.
Well, just Yasmin says it's so clear, so looks like
Good.
we're doing
Okay.
good
Right.
pace.
Okay, so these are the basics. I just want to make sure that I'm not going too fast, and again the information is presented in a clear and accessible way, for our students. Okay, let's look at this again. It's very important, the logic and the reason of quantitative research, because this will be different from compared to qualitative research. In quantitative research, we use deduction. We use something called deduction. So it follows the deductive reasoning and logic. And what does this mean? Before I say what it means in Arabic, it's sometimes the terminologies in Arabic might be helpful. So here we're talking about deductive reasoning. In Arabic, it's الاستنتاج. Okay, المنطق الاستنتاجي. Okay, أو الاستنباطي. Okay, this is what the quantitative research is based on. This is different from the qualitative research, which is usually inductive, اللي هو يكون استقرائي أكثر. Okay, نعمل عملية استقراء. But here we are making deduction, which is استنتاج أو استنباط. Okay, so let's see what it means. So with quantitative inquiries, usually we begin with having some kind of assumptions and hypotheses and theories, and we use quantitative research for the purpose of testing these assumptions and hypotheses. For example, let me give you an example. We usually begin with having some kind of our own judgment, okay, our own assumptions or hypotheses. يعني we're making فرضيات. Okay, فرضيات واحتمالات ونظريات, okay, الخاصة بنا. So this can be our own theories, hypotheses, or assumptions, or can be something we got through the literature, through previous research, and so on. Good. And then we want to find out if this also applies to our context. For example, in Gaza, does this also is it also true in Gaza, for example, or in Palestine, or in Oman, or in the UK, or whatever. All right. And so, well, for example, if we want to find out about this issue of using social media to enhance language efficiency, okay, or proficiency in English. All right, when to find out this issue, when to investigate this issue. And my assumption here, and my hypothesis I'm making, is that the students who are active on social media have been able to develop better language proficiency. Their pronunciation, their speaking skills, their listening skills, even reading skills have improved, or should be improving in theory. That's my theory. I haven't done the research yet, but that's what I'm assuming. You see what I mean? That's what I'm hypothesizing. That's what I'm theorizing. You see what I mean? So the turning all those nouns into verbs. So you are assuming, you are hypothesizing and theorizing that the more time, the longer time the students spend on social media, the better um, their language becomes. Okay, but I cannot take this as a law. I cannot take it as take it for granted. I still need to do my research. So I begin my research with these kind of assumptions, and then I need to test them. They may work somewhere in England, for example, or in Oman, but not necessarily in Palestine, given the situations, of course. So let's see, let's find out if this is also can be also true in Palestine. So you see that kind of logic that quantitative research is based on. You see what I mean? Pay attention, please, that this is going to be a different story when it comes to qualitative research. So my purpose here in quantitative research inquiries is that I aim at testing my assumptions and my hypothesis. So okay, so that's why we are talking about theory testing here, not theory generation. Okay, theory testing, because the theory generation will be the purpose of qualitative research. Okay, but here we're talking about theory testing. Let's take this example. Okay, this is my assumption. This is my hypothesis. Okay, فرضيات. So overuse of AI has a negative impact on learning skills. And by the way, that this is also a claim that is made by one of the recent papers that came out recently. They say that overuse of AI can impact negatively, of course, some of the learning skills, such as students' ability to be creative and learn on their own and so on. So everything you have to do in your learning, then you resort to AI, and AI will do your assignments, or AI will do the thinking for you. The AI can do the plan, the brainstorming, and so on. Now, researchers have found that the more students use AI in this way, this has negative impact on their learning skills. Now, do you agree with this? Do you think it's the case in your situation, in your context? That's something we can investigate and find out through quantitative research. Is that clear? So this is the logic behind quantitative research. All right. So we begin with a theory or an assumption or a hypothesis, and we aim at testing these hypotheses. All right. Let's look at the designs now. There are, of course, different designs of quantitative research. Let's look at them one by one and pay attention to the plays, or you can take notes, because we will need these designs. And later on, when we see examples of quantitative topics, I'm going to ask you to interact and match the topic to the appropriate design to see which design fits which topic. All right. So if you can take notes, then that will be useful. So let's look at the first one. It's very common, descriptive approach to quantitative research. So they collect the data through surveys or observations, or you take whatever data you have, and then you start describing those trends. Look at the trends, looking at directions of the phenomena, how big the size of the phenomena, how big is it, and then also the direction of the phenomena, as we said. So you use descriptive kind of research, kind of design. But sometimes you can do experiment, and this is another design. You can do experimental design, okay? Or you can do something called quasi-experimental design. Now, what's the difference between experimental and quasi-experimental? The difference is in the number of variables that you can control. Okay, remember we talk about variables. Okay, what is variable in Arabic, Dr. Ahmed? متغيرات الدراسة. Yes,
متغيرات. نعم.
متغيرات. And so it depends on how you control those variables. All right. For example, age is a variable. Gender is a variable. Okay. education level is a variable. So we were looking at, or socioeconomic factor is also a variable. So we'll be looking at, for example, we take a phenomenon, like for example, the dropout, the previous example, okay? And then we'll see what impacts, what affects dropout. Okay, is it the gender? Is it the socioeconomic factors, or is it the level of education, or is it the background, and so on, depending on the situation we are. All right. So this is quasi-experimental. Usually, quasi-experimental, we don't have that much control over the variables, but experimental, usually we have more control over variables. All right, so depending on the kind of control you have over variables. Sometimes we can choose the comparative design. Okay, the purpose is to compare two situations, two variables, two phenomena, and so on. But sometimes we also have causal comparative. Causal, so we're looking at the cause and effect. Okay, cause and effect, السبب والمسبب of okay. So we want to find out, for example, what causes a particular issue. Okay, and then we'll be looking at those causal comparative relationship. It's also known as ex post facto. Okay, ex post facto. This is from Latin. And it refers to studying the situation after the result has been has taken place. Okay, so this the an event has taken place, and then we're looking at the kind of relationship between the variables, and we compare the relationship between variables after the event has taken place. This is called ex post facto. So this is another design. Okay. Another design is when we do experiments again, and we do something called intervention. So intervention research. So you have a pre-test, intervention, and post-test. Okay. For example, we want to find out the impact of a new research method. A new teaching methods. Okay. For example, the teacher decided to use flipped classroom, اللي هو الفصل المقلوب. Okay. Flipped classroom. And so we'll have control group and experimental group. Okay, we'll teach one group the traditional method. And then we'll teach the experimental group using the mixed method. Using the flipped classroom method. So he or she can then compare the results of the students, or the reaction of the students. Okay, so this is called intervention kind of research, when you introduce a treatment, something called treatment or intervention to the situation, and then you find out how that intervention has impacted the situation, either students or the teacher himself or herself. Okay, so that's kind of the most obvious one, and the most common used design is the survey. Okay, usually survey-based research is also very common. And then another design is called correlational. And this is when you look at the correlations and how variables correlate to each other. Okay, positive correlations or negative correlations. Okay. يعني العلاقات الإيجابية والسلبية ما بين المتغيرات. Positive can be positive, can be negative, or can be neutral. Okay, so these are the general designs. Let's look at the data collection method. What do we do? What do we use to obtain data? Of course, the ones in red are the most commonly ones. Those surveys usually is the most commonly method used in quantitative research. And I noticed that perhaps this is one thing that I have my own reservations about, is that everyone now wants to use questionnaires. Okay, so when they think of doing research, they immediately think of designing a questionnaire. So let's do survey kind of research using questionnaires. Okay, I'll explain the difference between questionnaires and surveys in a minute. So survey, you can design a survey, and that's one way to get your quantitative data. You can do questionnaires, and usually questionnaires, اللي هي استبانات in Arabic, استبانات, the questionnaires is part of the survey. So when you do a survey, that's the whole research process. But questionnaire will be one of the methods that you can use in your surveys. You can also do tests. You can use scales, like agree, disagree scales, remember? Like in your questionnaires, you can have scales. And you can do lab tests, of course, and of course, experiments. And these experiments can be in social sciences, like in education. Okay, that's kind of experiments when you have intervention, post-test, pre-test and post-test, and then intervention in the middle, and so on. You see the impact of your new intervention. Or it can be, of course, in natural sciences. That's what people do in the labs. Okay, scientists do in the labs, in chemistry, in physics, and so on. So data can be collected using different methods. Let me also add to this list is observation can be also used. But of course, you will be counting how many times you see people doing things. So that's quantitative. Okay, so observation can be done. And also I can add another method, write it down, please. It's the document analysis, records analysis. Okay, so you look at the records, the numbers, statistics from the university, from colleges, from the government, and then you look at the numbers. So that's another way to collect the data as well. Okay, so different data collection methods depending on your research questions. Okay, the research questions, of course, and of course the design. All right. Because I said that the surveys are the most used ones, the common method. Let's look at how we can design and conduct questionnaires. So some questions to think about here. What is a survey? Okay. How is a survey different from a questionnaire? Again, some students ask about the difference. Okay, think of a survey as the whole research process. It's a complete study. All right, but the questionnaire will be a method in your survey. All right, of course you can use other methods for data collection in your survey, but questionnaire will be one method of surveys. Okay, one method of data collection within the survey. Okay, so questionnaire comes under surveys. All right, is a survey quantity or quality method? Usually it's quantitative method. In qualitative research, we don't use surveys. We use interviews and document analysis and observations, and we have other methods. We talk about them, inshallah, in our upcoming webinar. Okay, so this is quantitative method. What are the main sections of a survey? We're going to see that in a minute. What are the advantages of using surveys? What are the limitations? Are there any disadvantages? So there's some questions to think about when you design your survey. What makes a good survey? Okay, and so on. So what are the main sections of a survey? Here we go. Of course, you need a title first. You need introduction, of course, telling people what their research is all about. Okay, what is expected of them. Collect the basic information, demographic information, like their gender, educational background, location maybe, and so on. Not the names. Usually don't ask people for their names because this is meant to be anonymous. All right. You know, ethics. We talked about ethics before. Okay. And then comes the main questions. These can be MCQs or multiple choice questions or on a scale. Okay, like Likert scale. Like agree, disagree. All right. So you'll have all those questions, and then you can have open-ended questions, which is optional. So these are the main sections of a survey. Okay. But what makes a good survey? It's very important to pay attention to this place because, as I said, the methodology and the design is the backbone of your research. If you missed anything, or if you mess, okay, MESS, if you mess up with things, if the whole survey will be messed up, and then this will impact the rigor, trustworthiness, quality, validity of your results. And this in turn, of course, will impact the quality, the trustworthiness, and the validity of your recommendations, okay, that you are going to make later on. You see, it's like a chain. So it's very important to make sure that I'm designing a good survey. First of all, the good survey addresses the research questions meticulously. It's very important, carefully. It has to be to have to address the research questions. Okay, it has to target the right sample, the right people. Okay, don't send it like in a WhatsApp group and it then got everyone to respond to it. And that's one of the problems we're having with quantitative research, as we're gonna see in a minute. Of course, you can control this by sending it to the right people. Okay, it has to be well designed and laid out that is clear and easy to handle. It's very important, okay? Because you are not with them there. It's not like in an interview, if you don't understand the question, then you can ask the interviewer, right? Okay, to ask the question again or to explain it further, explain something further. But it's not the case with quantitative research. Here you are alone with your survey, with the questionnaire. And then, of course, if it's not clear, then you just end up ticking any box. So we need to be careful. Again, don't make it too long for people and allow participants sufficient time to respond. For example, don't just give them like 5 minutes and you have 5 pages for them to respond to. No, yeah, allow them sufficient time. So, in general, make sure you ask the right questions to the right people at the right time using the right channel. All right, that's the mantra, if you like. This is the basic rule. All right, so just make sure that in your survey, in your questionnaires, you ask the right questions to the right people at the right time using the right channel. All right, so you can send it through the post, or you can choose to send it by email, or you can give it to them like but don't give it to them the last 10 minutes of the class where they have tick 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 and then that's it. Teacher, okay, I'm gonna go and catch the bus. You see what I mean? So you need to make sure that you handle this carefully. All right. And of course, make sure it's proofread, free from language mistakes. Okay. Let's look at some examples and then I'll give you my examples and then I'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Look at this topic, the relationship between teaching methods and students' attainment. All right. How does my teaching method impact my students' learning? Okay, by looking at their interaction in the class, by looking at their test results, and so on. All right. Even attendance can be an indicator, right? You agree? You like a teacher, you like one class and said, okay, you'll never miss it. Okay. So you always, make sure that you are there, the first one there, because you like the topic, you like the style, you like the teacher, the class is fun, and so on. You see what I mean? So we can find out, okay, the relationship. So that's one example. Let's look at another example. The impact of online teaching on students' motivation. That's interesting. We are now doing this workshops online. How are online webinars or webinars different from in-person workshops? Okay, when we have like all in one room and we can interact, we can have a group work and so on. Okay, so what's the impact of online teaching on students' motivation? Okay, are students more motivated online or in person? So let's look at this one as well. Representation of the war on Gaza in Western media. And this is like one of the interesting topics that I notice that my own students always pick up on this topic. So how can we study this? How can we find out about, for example, how many times a particular phrase has been used, how many times or how many newspapers, how many websites, how many social media platforms, are reporting on the war in Gaza, for example, and in what way, okay, they are handling this. What kind of language, for example, they use. So we'll be looking at all these issues, okay, and child labor, for example, in the Arab world, okay, or any part of the world. It's just a topic anyway. Child labor in the Arabic world and in the Arab world and its relationship to sociocultural factors. So we're looking at this, educational, cultural, economic situations and see how this impact child labor. Okay. So these are some of the topics that can be investigated using quantitative topics. What I want you to do now is to answer this question. Now, which design you think or tools will you use to study each of the topics? I've got them again for you here on the same screen, the same 4 topics. And I want you to think of the designs. Again, we have the design on the left-hand side. Can you make the connection? Can you match the topics to what you think is the most appropriate design? Okay, take a minute to think about it. So remember, we talk about descriptive designs, experimental, quasi-experimental, comparative, causal comparative, intervention, survey-based kind of research, or correlational. Okay, looking at the correlations or the variables. So correlational kind of research is when we look at the positive relationship or a negative relationship. So if we take the first one, the relationship between teaching methods and students' attainment. Can anyone volunteer, please, to match that topic to the design? Which design do you think fits the first topic? Or any topic?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In the relationship between teaching and teaching methods and students' attainment, we can use correlations design. Also,
Yeah.
we can use descriptive. I think that.
Yes, this is very important. Yes, let me make this clear that when we talk about all these different design, it doesn't mean they exist in isolation. No, they can intertwine, they can connect with one another. Yeah. So while doing, for example, correlational kind of research by looking at the relationship between like teaching methods and students' attainment, this is like kind of correlational design. You can do that. Okay. You are also doing the descriptive at the same time. You can use the survey, for example, to find out. Okay. Or by looking at the test result and so on. Yeah. What about the last one? Again, you notice that in the first one and the fourth one, the first and fourth, we have the word relationship in both. So would you again say that this can be correlation? Yes, so we're looking at the variables here. Okay. Yeah, so we can also look at how the child labor can connect or can be affected by the socio-cultural factor or economic, situations, whatever. All right.
We can also use casual comparative.
You can use causal, yes, causal comparative by looking at what causes this issue, the child labor, for example. Okay, yeah. Why do children, for example, in some countries have to drop out from school and in one way or another, either willingly or unwillingly, have to find a job, of course, or sometimes even abused for not being paid. We know the problem, okay, in different countries, of course, unfortunately. All right. So this should give you an idea of how we can match the topics to, but for the sake of time, we need to move on so we can have also more activities later on. Let me now introduce you to data analysis. Now, once we have talked about data collection, and we said that the survey is the most widely used method, we looked at the topics. Let's now see, once we got our data, then what do we do with them? Okay, then you have to analyze them, of course, make sense of them. Okay, and when we talk about data analysis, we are talking about making sense of our data. Okay, interpret the data. Now, in quantitative research, we use 2 types of statistics: descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. Okay, descriptive statistics, الإحصاء الوصفي. Okay, الإحصاء الوصفي, descriptive statistics, and here you are doing very simple, basic mathematical calculations. You work out the sum, the average, the mean, the median, standard deviation, the highest value, the lowest value, and so on, the max and minimum, and so on. All right. These are the descriptive statistics. I think it's very easy, and I'm sure you have done this at one stage of your studies. Okay, but we are also using inferential statistics, which is about making predictions and generalization based on the data collected from a sample. All right. For example, we have like students from Al-Aqsa University, and we take them as a case. All right. And then we look at these statistics, and we start looking at what predictions can we make based on the data, and what generalizations or تعاميم, okay, واستنتاجات وتوقعات can we make based on the data we collect from the sample. All right. This is called inferential statistics. All right. So let's take an example of making a generalization. For example, female students at Al-Aqsa University are or use social media more often than male students. So this is one of the generalizations, okay, we are making, okay, based on the data. So this kind of interpretation, this kind of analysis, of course, based on the data you have got. You see this pie chart on the left-hand side? So based on this, for example, you can have, you can make this generalization. We can also take an example of a prediction. Let's see how predictions may work here. For example, if you want to test whether a new teaching method improves students' performance or attainment, then you can infer that the new method likely has or does not have an effect. So you introduce, for example, AI in your class, or the flipped classroom, as we mentioned before, and you want to find out whether it works well or no, it doesn't have any impact, and so on. So you can make predictions based on the data you get, okay? And your prediction will say, oh, okay, if I continue using this in the future, it is more likely to have a positive impact on my students. Or, no, I don't think that it's gonna have noticeable impact on my students, so maybe then I need to change something in my situation, my teaching. All right. So you can use statistics in order, or the data, in order to make either generalizations or predictions. Okay, and this is what we call the inferential statistics. So here we talked about descriptive statistics. When you work out the average, the mean, and you find out the highest, the lowest point, and so on. And here you are using the inferential statistics to make generalizations and predictions. So far, so good. So this is how you analyze your data. All right. What tools can we use? What tools can we use to interpret and analyze our data? Of course, the most commonly used, or the obvious, very popular package is SPSS, which stands for, I'm sure many of you, if not all, familiar with SPSS. It's statistical package for social sciences. Okay, statistical package for social science. We can also use Microsoft Excel. You can use Google Sheet, or you can use a program, or also called Stata. Okay, Stata can help you again with doing those all the statistics, descriptive, inferential, but it can also help you design these visual illustrations, like the graphs, the charts, the table, the bar charts, the bar charts, and so on. Okay, those are all visual representations. All right. So this is how we analyze our data, using the two types of statistics, and also these are some of the tools that you can use. There are many tools, of course, other tools, but so this is my limitations, some of the limitations that I think quantitative methods have. And of course, again, this from literature as well. It's not just my own personal observation. One problem with this kind of methodologies is that it lacks contextual depth. You see what I mean? When we look at, especially if you are in education or in the social sciences, okay, في العلوم الاجتماعية, في العلوم التربوية, okay? So if you're looking at the social context, they are so complex. They are not easy. I think you agree with me, don't you? They are so complex that it's not just a matter of giving out a questionnaire to people and then say, okay, use it, and then you tick the boxes. And so you need, first of all, to make sure that it is the suitable method. All right. Make sure you design it in a very careful way, following the rules that we talked about, the guidelines. and make sure you give it to the right people at the right time, giving them the right, enough time to respond. And then you have the skills in order to, of course, to interpret the results and so on. But at the end of the day, you get numbers. So 75% of the participants say so and so. Okay, half the students like the new teaching method. So when we talk about, like, say, for example, 52% of the students in your class like the new method. Okay, what does that mean? Of course, it gives you indications, yeah, but I think you will, as a teacher, you will need more than just a number. You see what I mean? And so then that's when qualitative research comes into play, as we're going to see. So why not combine quantity and quality together in order to get a better picture, better understanding? But again, as I said, it depends on the topic. Maybe the purpose is just to find the size of the phenomena. Okay, so quantitative research can do the job. All right, it depends on the topic. All right, but if you're looking at other topics where considerable depth is required, then maybe quantitative methods will have these shortcomings. Okay, will have its own limitations, lack of depth. So quantitative research often reduces complex human behavior. As I said, these are complex. They reduce human behaviors and experiences and social phenomena to numerical data. This can be problematic. It does not capture the meaning, the context, or the depth behind those responses and feelings. Example, look at this example. A survey might show that 70% of the students are dissatisfied, okay? But it doesn't explain why they feel that way, all right? If the purpose is only just to show the size, then that's 70%, fine, okay? But I mean, in most cases, it's not just enough to get the number. You need to to understand why. Okay. Another problem, our limitation, is flexibility. Okay, because once quantitative instrument like a survey or test has been designed, it's not easy to adapt during the data collection. Okay, but you can't change the survey. You cannot change the test. For example, if you are using tests. This means researchers might miss important insights that emerged during the study, but were unable, of course, to include them in the original. We're unable to include them in the original design. Okay, because maybe new things that come up or emerge during the survey, then you won't be able to go back to the survey or this questionnaire and change it. You see what I mean? Limited flexibility, unlike qualitative designs, as we're gonna see next week. Okay, number 3, assumptions of objectivity and neutrality. So we have this assumption that it is objective, but quantitative research assumes that data are objective and free from bias. هذه bias is the تحيزات, okay, in Arabic, تحيزات. Okay, it's very important that we also be aware of this. So biases will always be there. Bias will always be there. It can occur through these ways. The way the questions are phrased, through your sampling methods, through your interpretation of the results. So you cannot really assume that it is 100% objective. The bias will always be there. You cannot ignore it. In qualitative research, for example, as we're going to see later, we have our own way to deal with bias. Okay, we acknowledge bias. Okay, but here they say that it is not bias. Okay, it's objective, but objective, neutral, these are quite tricky issues. Okay, so numbers may give false impression of reality, of course. Okay, more limitations: inability to explore the how and why. As we said, quantitative methods aim to answer the what, how many, and to what extent questions, but they fail to address the why and how behind those patterns. Why is something happening? Why are students leaving schools or colleges? Okay, why are students not learning through social media, for example? Okay, and so on. So why is the overuse of AI negatively impact students' learning skills and thinking skills, creativity? Yeah, why? A survey will not help you to do that. So you need other methodologies. You see what I mean? You see, each method has its own, of course, advantages and disadvantages, strengths and limitations. All right. So I now have one paper to show you, but before that, I'll just pause for a minute to take any questions you might have. Please feel free to unmute your mic and share any questions, or it can be kind of observation, or anyone has a comment. Very quickly, I would share the paper just to let you get a sense of how papers look like. I'm sure you have seen, of course, the papers, but just okay, just a
Dr.
second.
Hashil, I have it's a question and a comment at the same time.
No, yeah, please.
Now you mentioned, and this is interesting, to be honest. You mentioned how the way the questions or statements of a survey or a question are phrased. I mean, the way how they are phrased may kind of impact the credibility of the findings. Like sometimes I feel that the researcher tries to lead me to the answer he or she wants from me in the way he or she phrased the question. Now, if you don't mind, do you have any particular kind of observation that you think if the question is positively written, it is leading the respondent, or if it is negatively written, it leads the respondent to a way or another?
Yes, of course. Yes. And this is a very important issue. The way the questions are written not only have impact on how these people respond, but they also can have some ethical concerns as well, ethical consequences. If you are asking, for example, a question about, how to, something about a very tricky, topic that, have to do with illegal things, for example, something unethical, then the way you ask that question might be leading the participants to something they were not supposed to learn about or to know. So what I mean, again, so as a researcher, we have this ethical commitment here, ethical responsibility, not to, through our surveys, to be careful, so careful in the way we write the questions and the statements, so that they do not reveal issues that our participants were not supposed to get exposed to. You see what I mean? If, for example, you are doing research on drugs, if you are doing, on use of illegal substances, or something about violence, for example, if I want to investigate violence, violence in general, it's a researchable topic. Okay, many people do that, but if you're going to include examples of how people use violence and so on, then we end up like having like suggestions for people. You see what I mean? So that's illegal. That's very, 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 very unethical. Now, again, the kind of questions can also be leading. So it's like putting the words in their mouth, if you like. You see what I mean? And so the leading questions again can be problematic. And so that's what I meant by the kind of the questions, the way we phrase them. It has to be in a way that that is not leading and not breaking or breaching the ethical issues there. Okay. So it's very important. I agree. It's very important to know how to phrase the questions in the right way. It's a responsibility, in fact. Okay, so just for the sake of time, here is a paper. Try to make it larger if possible. Okay. This is a published paper, the effectiveness of utilizing ESL lab listening website on developing listening comprehension skills among secondary school students. Okay, that's a study. If you look at the structure of the paper, usually the title followed by the authors, affiliation of the authors, abstract, keywords, and then the introduction and the rest of it. Okay. We will go over the paper, of course, there, but I just want to make it larger so you can see it. So let's look at the abstract, and we can see the methodology used in the abstract. All right. It says that this study aimed to discover the effectiveness of utilizing ESL lab listening website on development of listening comprehension skills among secondary school students in Aoun Al-Jawa Secondary School in Al-Qasim region in Saudi Arabia, of course. Furthermore, the study aimed to find out whether there is a significant difference. Look at the language used here, because this is a quantitative research. The significant difference in the test score of listening comprehension skills of the pre-test and the post-test of experimental group and control group. Remember, we talk about all these terminologies. Post-test, pre-test, post-test, intervention kind of research, experimental group, control group, المجموعة ضابطة والمجموعة التجريبية, and so on. This is all the language of quantitative research. So the researcher here explain the topic, the purpose of the topic, and then, of course, the methodology. The experimental quantitative method in a quasi-experimental design was used in collecting data through the application of the pre and post test, okay, through Cambridge English test, the CAT. And that was given to two groups. The study measured. The study measured only two sub-skills, the listening comprehension, namely the listening for main idea and listening for details. And then, of course, they did the data and the results and so on, okay? And then finally, the recommendation, as you can see here. All right, so this is the abstract. Usually abstract begins with introducing the topic, the purpose of the topic, the methodology, the key findings, and the key recommendations. All right, so this is a sample. Okay, let's look at the introduction. Usually you need to have an introduction where you set the scene and, of course, explain the context of the study, statement of the problem, research question. Okay, there's one main research question. Okay, let's look at the question. What is the effectiveness? What is the effectiveness? Say kind of questions. What? Remember what we said, that quantitative research deals with what kind of questions? Okay, what? How big? Okay, the phenomena is, and so on. So what is the effectiveness of utilizing ESL lab listening website on developing? So we're talking about cause and effect, okay, kind of correlations design. The main question can be branched out, of course, into sub-questions and so on. All right, purpose of the study. The study focus on listening comprehension skills, and then the studies also component of the previous studies. So that's still the introduction. Then we have the study methodology. So a bit of literature review here as well. Study methodology, you explain methodology, population, the sample, data collection tools. Here they use the test, of course, statistics, procedures, and then the findings and the discussions. As you can see, when it comes to discussions and the findings, you need to have all these tables. Okay, and of course you're gonna see also the tables. Can you see the descriptive statistics we talked about? You see the means, the standard deviations, t-test score, the p-value, and all of these statistical works. Of course, you can do this through Stata and SPSS. Okay, look at this. Okay, here again we have all these bar charts which shows the findings. So this is a typical or sample research paper. Again, the findings and the discussions. Is a discussion here, discussion of the results, summary of the study, recommendations, suggestions for future research. Remember, we said that in most of the papers will have this section at the end. So these are ideas for future research, if you like. if you are working within this area, you can have look at this ideas, and then you can have your own research. All right. So this is, of course, these are references as well. So this shows you the structure of a quantitative paper. Of course, the different ways of writing quantitative paper, but because of the limitation of time, I just chose this one. So very quickly, if we going back to our uh, very quickly to the survey, the PowerPoint slides. Where are they? Okay, just a second. Oh, okay. Right. So okay, is it full screen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have time for an activity, and then we'll
Absolutely.
call it a day? Okay.
Sure.
Questions and comments. But here I designed this activity for students if they have time. I already have my own topic, and then I want them to continue if they could by having their own topics, design, and then the data collection tool, and then share this with us. Let's look at the example. Okay, the topic, most required materials by families in Gaza after the war. Inshallah soon. Inshallah, very soon. So what will be the most required materials by families in Gaza right after the war? Okay. What will be the immediate needs? What kind of design can you use? If this is one of the topics that if you really want to help out, if you want to volunteer, okay, find out those families. What kind of, how can you approach this? Okay. The design, of course, will be like a descriptive design. It could be survey-based design as well. And my data collection method will be survey. There's one way to do it. It's not the only way, but one way to do it, or to go to go about this, is to use surveys. And it, of course, will be descriptive. So it'll be describing the kind of materials they need, the kind of pressing needs they are in for. Okay, and so this will be descriptive design, survey-based design. You will design a survey questionnaire through questionnaires, of course. You give it to people, and then said, okay, so we need medicine, we need, for example, baby food, we need, the basic things, and then you make a list of these items, and then you start using descriptive statistics to find out the most needed item in which area, and so on. Of course later on we will be thinking about how you can provide those things, but this is one example. Okay, you can have examples like from your own context, like educational context, for example. All right, if you have time, and if you are interested, you can, of course, share with us your topic, your design, and what you think of the most suitable data collection tools, the ones we talked about. Okay, so just to put theory in practice now, to put things together. All right, I'm done then, Dr. Ahmed, and if it's over to you, and over to our dear participants.
Thank you, Dr. Hashil. That was wonderful. Guys, if you have any question or comment or suggestion in here, please come in. Either send your question in the chat box, or feel free to unmute your microphone and ask. While comments or questions come through, Dr. Hashil, I was always wondering about the use of the word sample. Now, I feel that quantitative methodology has some kind of jargon that we say sample in quantitative research.
Yeah.
But can we say participants when we have like the ones who completed the survey or the questionnaire? Are they participant, or is sample the only word that we can use when it comes to those people who help us with the research process?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and this is the topic that has I myself have argued a lot, that people who are helping us, they're kind enough to help us in our research. We cannot just call them subjects or but so, you know, sometimes they are called subjects. Sometimes they are called you know, just people, okay, or sample in quantitative research. We don't have this kind of words, language in qualitative. In qualitative, we use participants. Okay, they are, because they are our partners in the research. You cannot complete the qualitative research without a group of people whom you consider your partners, the real partners, and the relationship between the qualitative. We're going to talk more about this, of course, next time when we talk about qualitative research. But against the use of just members or subjects. These words, I think, should not be used like subjects or members. But the word participants is a more humane, a more polite way to use it. Yeah. So I think I advise researchers to use participants. Either you are doing quantity or quality or mixed method, whatever.
That's interesting. And I think this is informed or underpinned by the philosophy of constructivism, where you view participants or those who help you with the research as co-constructors of knowledge, because you know what I mean. So it comes from that perspective, I suppose.
Yeah. You know, when I first designed this, I had that slide on philosophy. When I talk about all this constructivism, interpretivism, and so on, but on quantitative research, we are positivist thinking. Okay, the positivist thinking that dominates this kind of you know quantitative thinking, and but I then decided that this might not be like you know, I don't want like to have lots of cognitive load. The cognitive load will be higher than you know for our students. So if I were, for example, doing this for a group of postgraduate students, then I would definitely talk about it, but not for undergraduates. So, but we want them to grab the basics, and we want them to have to motivate them to do research rather than take them away from research.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
what you mean. Dr. Yahya is asking, of course, after thanking you for this enlightening webinar, he asks, what is the weakness and strength of quantitative research? Now, I suppose you talked about the limitation, but if you can shortly, briefly summarize the limitation and also the strength of quantitative research.
Of course, yes, of course. It's very helpful. I mean, sometimes then I'm not totally against the numbers. The quantitative research can be very helpful when it comes to studying the size of the phenomenon, as I said, the direction of the phenomenon. If you are interested in finding out, for example, how many of your students are using AI. So just pay attention to the language I'm using. How many? So that is, I'm interested in the number. So this is quantity. And then I'll either ask them in my class and then find a number. For example, a class of 40, if I have like in a theater, I've got 40, 45, 50 students in front of me, then I can find very quickly, you do a count, head counts, and then find out, okay, about 30 of them use it. But if I want to go into more details, then I will design a survey and then get the numbers through a survey. Yeah, it can be very helpful. Sometimes, for example, in Gaza, for example, you are interested in finding out the number of families that require baby milk, for example. All right, not all families like maybe have children, but let's say want to find out the families that have children. Okay, and then we'll find out how many of them, so we can then provide this kind of milk for them. So the purpose is to find how many. So we go the quantitative research. Very helpful. It can be very helpful. The numbers can help us, can give us indications. Okay. For example, the number. What about the numbers that describe, or the statistics that describe male, female, for example, use of social media? Okay, because that's all what I aim at. I aim at finding out the size and the direction of the phenomena. That's it. Quantitative research. It can be you know decent for my purpose. So it's all about the purpose. All right. But if I'm interested in finding out why, then make sure you attend our next webinar.
Another question from Yasmin. She says, I want to ask about the difference between experimental and quasi-experimental designs in terms of number of variables in the study, which have more variables to control over.
It's more to do with how much control you have over the variables than the number of variables. Let me repeat that again. It's a matter of how much control you have over the variables rather than the number of variables. All right. If anyone quantitative researcher here can also respond to this, but it's not the number of variables, but it's how much. Usually in quasi-experimental, we have limited control over the variables. We can control some of the variables, but we don't control all of the variables. That's why that's how it's different from experimental. All right, and there is also, when we talk about experimental and quasi-experimental, we also have non-experimental kind of research. In social sciences research, I myself will be very careful to use experimental. I mean, people use quasi-experimental, yes, when they design like control, when they have control groups, like, and then they do post-test. And this is a kind of research. The example paper we have seen is an example of this. They have control group, experimental group, post-test, pre-test. This is kind of intervention research, which comes under quantitative, of course, one of the design we discussed. But I myself, because I'm qualitative researcher, I have my own reservations, regarding this kind of designs myself, especially when it comes to education. And Dr. Ahmed, you know me, like I'm a qualitative researcher, and I don't want like I don't imagine myself doing a survey kind of research. Well, if for example, still, if I'm still interested, like in finding out about numbers, and I can still do that through qualitative measures. But I will not do like an experiment on my students. That's even unethical to do experiments on people. We have a problem with this. I mean, I don't know if we have time to discuss this, but this is just a quick statement that people just take it so easy. I don't know, just repeat what they read in books. They say, well, let's do the experiment. Let's do the experiment. I mean, experiments are done in natural sciences. And usually, scientists do experiments in labs. And I'm sorry to say this, that they usually sometimes use animal testing and use, rats, to do tests, on particular stuff. That's kind of different type of research in education setting, in social settings. Even if you are doing quantitative research, please don't use this kind of language. We are not doing experiments on people. People are not out there to be our subjects, to be our objects to do the experiments on. See what I mean? So you have to be really very careful about the language we use. Even if you are using quantitative research, don't call people subjects, okay, or people, or members of the part of the sample. They are, yes, members of the sample, but I mean, I would go for words like participants. They are partners, and the relationship between me and my partners is not only limited to data collection. I will still need them to validate my interpretation later on when I do qualitative research, which is not the case with quantitative research. So yeah, we need to be very careful about the language we use.
I think this is interesting, and it's an ethic, and comes from an ethical perspective, which is, I suppose, sometimes probably overlooked in research or among researchers, that I can experiment a new approach or something on my students, and I treat them as subjects, which is controversial, as you said. Another last question from me, Dr. Hashil, if you don't mind. Now, when deciding to include a survey as a tool in research or a study, and if we go with just descriptive statistics, like not inferential, descriptive statistics, do we have to go to the kind of means, standard deviation, or usually we can just summarize what we found, or say like 70% of the students said that and that, 85% of the students were doing that and that. Is that considered also descriptive statistics or not?
Yeah, before you can make those generalizations, and we call them quantifiers, many, most, some, few, these are quantifiers. So before you use them, you have to run those descriptive statistics. So how are you getting the 75%? By taking this a number of responses divided by the total responses, right? Times 100. So you get the percentage. So when you work out the percentages, that is descriptive statistics. So that's the first step. Before I can say the majority, the vast majority, the staggering majority, or a minority, or most, many, some, I still need to do these descriptive statistics. If I get, for example, 15%, okay, and then use a quantifier for 15%, which can be as little as, or can be a few. If I got, like, say, for example, 48%, that's almost half, isn't it? If I have like something over 60, that's almost, most or majority. You see what I mean? So I still need to work out those simple mathematical calculations, which we call the descriptive statistics, and then to get the percentages, and then from the percentages I can quantify.
And those, of course, need to be reported in the study, right? The
Of course. So once,
statistics.
yes, as we said, as we have seen, when you say many, most, I need the percentage in brackets.
And usually these are taken, like, take the form of the shape of a table or something like that.
Yes, exactly. You have the table on the top, and then you describe the table. And we have seen it in the sample paper. So you have the table or the graph or the chart, and then you describe that graph chart by using this quantifiers. Like most of the students said so and so. Many of the students said so. Almost half of them said so. Almost all of them agree on something. If you got, for example, like 97%, that's almost all. Okay. If you got something like 52%, just over half of the students, and so on. So we use those quantifiers. Okay. But I cannot use the quantify. I cannot make quantification without working out the percentages. So descriptive statistics, and then make my quantifiers.
I see. Yeah. Any other questions, guys, or comments, please, before we wrap up? Comments, suggestions? Eliza, please go ahead.
Dr. Hashil, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. As a qualitative researcher, do you have a comment, an opinion on uses of other softwares like MaxQDA, or I forget the others that are also used for qualitative data analysis?
In vivo.
In vivo, yes, and there's another one too. I forget the name.
Yeah.
Can you comment on those, please?
Yes. On Monday, inshallah, if we are going to keep with the same arrangements, we're going to talk about qualitative research, and of course we're going to discuss all these qualitative data analysis packages. You started your question by saying, like, as a quantitative researcher. I'm a qualitative researcher, not a quantitative researcher. And
sorry, I thought I said qualitative.
Well, okay, maybe I didn't hear well, but yeah, I'm qualitative researcher, and so next week, as I repeatedly said, we will be talking about qualitative research, and when we discuss, of course, those software packages, you can use different packages. We have MaxQDA, the quite common one, NVivo, Atlas, T. Okay, these are the three ones that I can mention now, but there's something to be said about these packages again when it comes to qualitative research. Okay, but people say that these are the packages they use for data qualitative data analysis. I have my own and again observation and reservations, in this. So we might discuss that later in more details. But you can, of course, if you talk about qualitative data analysis, we very commonly use the thematic analysis approach. The thematic analysis, which will help you immerse yourself into the data and then trying to find out those overall themes that emerge from the data. And of course, that requires reading the data, going over the data, several times. Okay, it's not something you can do in half a minute, half an hour, okay, or 2 hours even. Okay, especially when you conduct interviews, for example, then those interviews will be transcribed, and then you need to go through all these transcriptions, trying to understand what the participants were saying, what they are saying, how they are saying it, why they are saying what they are saying, what major themes can emerge from those. We'll talk more about that. I mean, I believe that you can use qualitative packages, what they call the qualitative data analysis packages or software, to classify your data, to help you organize the data, but they don't really do the actual qualitative analysis. That's the job of us as human beings, because trying to find out the actual meanings, okay, from the data is not something that packages can do. What they can do, as we're going to talk more, of course, about this next time, they can help you organize, classify, perhaps subcategorize your data, but not the actual data analysis. If you are working on purely qualitative data and you want to analyze them, then you can use this at the first stage, initial stage of your analysis. But later on, the human interpretation will be required in order to make sense, to make sense of the data. That's not something that these software can help you with. Okay.
Thank you. That was perfect.
So you still, we still need your background, your experience as a researcher, or two things: your experience with qualitative data analysis, because it's a skill, and your experience and familiarity with the situation, the context you are working on. So what I mean. So if the researcher belongs to a particular environment in which he or she is conducting the survey, then they are more likely to interpret the data in a way that is actually meant by the participants. It's not something like an outsider. You know what I mean? This is an important issue in qualitative research. But some people might say, no, but you are being so subjective this way. Yes, we are being subjective, but we need subjectivity. In qualitative research, we don't reject subjectivity. We acknowledge subjectivity, and we make the distinction between subjectivity and bias. All right, we'll talk more about these issues maybe later. But yeah, those like Atlas, T, MaxQDA, NVivo. These are packages, what people say, though they claim that they use to analyze data, qualitative data, but I don't use them to analyze qualitative data. I only use them to classify my themes, to help you work out the themes, organize the themes, subcategorize the themes and the major codes, to do the coding maybe, yeah, but not the actual data analysis. Okay, thank you.
That's interesting, and we really look forward to the session on Monday on qualitative research. So we'll send you out an announcement about qualitative research workshop. But I have a comment here, if you don't mind, Dr. Hashil. So does that mean that manual analysis qualitative data does not count as kind of something not credible when it comes to research? Is it acceptable to do manual code, like analysis? If you just ditch all those software and say, I'll do it manually, arithmetic analysis manual. Is that okay in qualitative? I'm not preempting the session on Monday, but just I'm curious to know.
Yeah, thank you. Not every single qualitative researcher analyze their data using those packages. You can go ahead and do it manually. There are many researchers and qualitative research experts who are against. They're openly saying it in their workshop and their writing that they are against the use of those software, just simply because they don't do the actual analysis. Actually, they don't do. And now we have a new trend coming out. This is the use of AI in data, in qualitative data analysis. Again, I need to be very careful. I'm not here undermining the potential of AI in qualitative research. Actually, there's been a lot said, written, published, and lots of webinars and workshops being out there. You can search for them online. And I know a particular experts in this. Without mentioning names, but we can discuss later. That she is very, very popular on this, and she's doing this, almost on everyday basis. Like she publishes a lot on this, and she leads workshops on AI in qualitative research analysis. But you can still do it manually. You can still justify your choice. I did it manually for my PhD. I did it manually for the qualitative paper that I published. It was like a book chapter. We did it manual. We did not need those packages. But you can still claim that you don't, especially if it's small scale research. Yeah. But I'm not saying, okay, forget about them, don't use them, use them. But for the initial stages, because in qualitative research, there are different levels of analysis. Initial level, okay, where you do the coding, data coding, and then you do the themes. Okay, you work out the major themes. Well, once you have the codes and the themes in place, then the second stage comes into play. We'll talk more about the two levels of analysis and where those packages fit.
Yeah, we will on Monday, inshallah. So, okay, I think that's it for today. I don't want to hold you for longer. I know you have other commitments and your schedule is really busy. Thank you so much, Dr. Hashil. Before we finish, I'd like to thank you on behalf of everyone and on behalf of everyone who will watch this recording later on and who will find something interesting and useful and will guide them throughout their research and their academic career. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks for our audience and attendees who made it to this session. And we look forward to having you more in upcoming sessions very soon. Just watch out. We will be announcing our other sessions. We have a session on Saturday, another on Monday, and soon we have another session with George on the 12th of July. So stay tuned and we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I also want to thank you, Dr. Ahmad, George, Dr. Yahya, Eliza, and all our students. I learned a lot from the questions that you raised, the discussions. It's really very helpful, very helpful. Yeah, every time someone's asking a question, it's really very helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's what we are all like lifelong learners. So that's something to learn everything. So I'll stop here and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Stay safe.